Thank you so much for Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful. I hope you have a wonder. No, 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 blah, blah, blah. I cannot say that word. I give up. I give up. If you'd like to read a book about queer teens saving the world from dimension-hopping body snatchers, check out my young adult novel, Guardians, available now from 9 Star Press. We are finally back with Heartstopper Comics vs. Show. Yay! Cheer, 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 hooray, hooray, hooray. So for season 1, we looked at the comics, and we looked at the episodes, and we compared them. And for season 2, we're going to look at the comics, and look at the show, and compare them. So this chapter of the comics is called Out, and of course episode 1 of season 2 is also called Out. So in the show, we start off chronologically immediately the next day after Nick and Charlie have their beach day. But in the comics, we start with a different scene, which we do see in episode 1, but not until the end. Was that a confusing sentence? I feel like that was a confusing sentence. So in the comics, we start off with the Spring family having breakfast. So Oliver, who of course is not in the show sadly, is munching on his toast. And Jane is looking at some papers and having coffee. And Julio is meditating also with his coffee. And okay, that's right. So Jane is signing the permission slips for the Paris trip. And, smiling, she gives them to Charlie.
Charlie, I signed that form for the Paris trip. It's on the fridge.
Oh, thanks.
And Charlie's like, actually, there's something else I need to talk to you about. And parents are both like, ... Julio makes a joke about, like, are you trying to come out again? Because we already know. You told us last year, remember? And Charlie's like, it's not that. Then Charlie tells them, I have a boyfriend.
You know my friend Nick? I thought I probably should tell you. He's my boyfriend.
Now, here's the thing, like, in the comics, they both say, oh, that's wonderful, what's his name? In the show, this whole scene has a much less supportive vibe to it. It's a lot colder. Whereas in the comics, I think the warmth of Charlie's parents comes across better. So, like, first of all, we have them celebrating the fact that he has a boyfriend, both of them. And then they're both surprised when they find out that it's Nick. And, Jane tries to explain by saying, like, well, I suppose we didn't think he was. And Charlie's like, you didn't think he was gay? Well, he's a bit of a jock, isn't he? And Charlie says, being gay has nothing to do with that. And for what it's worth, he's actually bisexual.
You're surprised.
He's a very sporty, sort of laddish sort of boy. I wouldn't have assumed he was gay.
Being gay has nothing to do with that. And actually, he's bisexual.
Now, in the show, we immediately go into the no hanky-panky.
Gay or bisexual, Nick is banned from sleepovers from now on.
What?
Yeah, there will be no hanky-panky in this house.
Whereas in the comics, Jane says, you're right, we shouldn't have assumed, and Julio says, we're just happy you're happy, and Charlie is super happy. And then, like, they ask follow-up questions. Is Nick out to his family? Oh, he just came out to his mom. And this is the point where we get the opening scene that is in the show with, Nick coming up behind Charlie and covering his eyes and all that, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think it's really interesting, the tonal difference between the comics scene and the show, where, again, the show, the feeling of Charlie's parents is a bit colder. And, instead, like, there's not a single moment where they celebrate his relationship with Nick, or the fact that he is in a relationship and is happy about it. Which, like, it could have been a timing issue that they needed that scene to move a little bit faster, because there is quite a lot packed into episode 1. Much of it is the kissing montage at the beginning, but, we wouldn't want to cut that. But yeah, in general, I just think that the show plays up the more fractured nature of Charlie's relationship with his parents. It plays that up a little bit more than the comics do. But, it's a choice that they made. I don't think either one is wrong. They're just different. So then at this point, we flash to 3 days earlier. And we have, Charlie is telling his parents, he told me it went really well, talking about Nick. And then Charlie flashes back to Nick sneaking up behind him and covering his eyes. Of course, in the show, this happens in the classroom.
Nick. Hi.
When Charlie has walked in and looked around to see if Nick is there, and he's not. But here, Charlie's at his locker in the hallway. And Nick comes up behind him and is like, guess what? I came out to my mom last night. But Charlie says, oh my God, how'd it go? Really good. She was really supportive. So this part too, the dialogue is word for word the same as it is in the show.
Guess what?
What?
I came out to my mum last night.
Oh my God, how did it go?
Really well. She was completely fine with it.
And then, want a well done kiss?
Want a well done kiss?
Yeah.
And Charlie just slams Nick up against the lockers. And we have the line, kissing at school is still a terrible idea. We're going to get caught one day.
Oh, kissing at school is a terrible idea.
So this scene is a flashback. Because then, Charlie has clearly been, like, thinking about it and remembering, pressing Nick up against the lockers and kissing him. And his mom is like, Charlie? And Charlie's like, yeah, it went well. It went well. Again, they're different. I don't think either is better than the other, but I do like the way that the show handled it with this going chronologically and picking things up right where we left off in season 1. So I do think I preferred that method a little better, where like instead of starting with Charlie telling his parents, we start with Charlie and Nick. Which really feels like the right choice because, the focus should be on the two of them. So then we continue the scene with Charlie and his parents. And Charlie's saying, yeah, it went really well. And then Tori appears, as she does. And she looks over at her parents. She looks over at Charlie. And she's like, he told you about Nick then. You won't be grandchildless after all. And Charlie's like, who said anything about grandchildren? And this gives us the segue into Julio saying, oh, Nick's definitely banned from sleepovers forever now, which is interesting. Like, knowing that Nick and Charlie cannot conceive a child together, no matter what they may do with one another, this nonetheless is what spurs Julio to be like, no hanky-panky. Charlie is understandably upset about this situation, and this plays out pretty similarly. There will be no hanky-panky in this house. Please don't say hanky-panky.
Yeah, there will be no hanky-panky in this house.
Please don't say hanky-panky.
Bedroom door open at all times, and Charlie's like, I've got to go. I have an exam.
Bedroom door open at all times.
I'm leaving.
No hanky-panky till you're married.
Stop saying hanky-panky.
Julio calls after him, no hanky-panky till you're married. And Tori says, stop saying hanky-panky. So again, just the tone is very, very different here. Like, it's playful, it's fun. And it's been really interesting to me seeing how people react to the no hanky-panky scene. Because, like, I was really looking forward to that scene because in the comics, it's really fun. It's just like a fun scene. And there's that moment where Charlie's parents are a little bit thrown off by the fact that Nick and Charlie are dating. But they get over it immediately, and the vibe is really positive. They're happy for him. Julio is just kind of playfully being like, oh, no hanky-panky under my roof, ha ha ha. And, we have Tori joking about grandchildren. So the whole mood of the scene is very different. Whereas in the show, it has more of an unsettled feel. And, like, you get more of a sense of Charlie's parents not really getting it. And they don't seem happy for him. And they never say that they're happy for him or ask any questions. It's a real departure from what we see of Julio in season 1, where he's just extremely caring and, looking out for Charlie as much as he can. Whereas where we see him in season 2, we get a little glimpse of that, but for the most part, he doesn't come across as much as someone who has Charlie's back no matter what. So we go from that directly into Charlie telling Nick about it, presumably the next day, saying they were fine about it, but I think you're banned from sleepovers. And Nick's like, what? It's not like we do anything. And they exchange glances and both blush and then both look away. And Nick's like, anyway, you've got your English exam today? Yeah, I'll meet you after. Yeah. Here we have a little montage of we have Charlie doing an exam. We have Nick and Charlie studying, where at least we see lots of papers, but they're just making out. Then we have Nick doing his GCSE French, which I'm sure he did very well on. We have Nick and Charlie at the park with Nellie studying, lamenting an exam, Nick chewing on his pencil. So, like, this part of things really gets drawn out in the show where, we see them preparing for exams in episode 2 and episode 3, and we don't really get to the end of that until episode 3. It goes by very quickly here. And then we jump to Thursday, June 3rd, where Charlie is asking Nick over text, how was your chemistry exam? And Nick looks super happy and is saying, not too bad, but not great. Are you on study leave? Can you come around mine? I badly need hugs. And Charlie's like, I can't. I'm at a biology revision session. I also need hugs, please. And Nick says, sneak out and come home with me. And Charlie says, Saws, I love energy flow and plant growth more than you. And Nick says, I have some ideas for things we could do involving energy flow. And Charlie's like, key smash, stop. I love this panel of Nick looking super happy. We go into a scene which is actually in episode 2. So we're not going to look at that right now. We're going to look at that later. But it is a scene of the rugby lads talking to Nick and trying to apologize. Hey everybody, it is Thom from the future again. So I was really tired when I was recording the video that you have been watching, which is evident in the fact that I called Jane Spring Sarah a total of 4 times, all of which I have cut out from this video so as to maintain my image as someone who knows her name. So another fun thing that I did was I did not realize in my tired state that the scene where Ms. Singh catches Nick and Charlie kissing in the equipment room does not happen in episode 1. It happens in episode 3. So that is when we should be discussing that. And we will discuss it then. But I discussed it here. And I discussed it quite a lot. So I'm going to leave it in here. And yeah, so here's a little preview of what happens in episode 3. But yeah, the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of stuff in the first part of this chapter of the comics that is scattered through the first few episodes of the show. So we have, some things from episode 2, like the stuff about them taking their exams and studying and going to the park. We have stuff from episode 3 with the rugby lads, Nick and Charlie getting caught making out in the equipment room. So we will still talk about those things when we get to episode 2 and 3. But here is a little bit of me talking about it now because I already did it, so. I'm hoping I won't have to appear again in this video, but we'll see what other interesting things tired me from last night messed up in this video. So, alright, future Thom out. So then we have 1 week later. So 1 week after Nick talks to Christian, Sai, and Otis, and they kind of revive their friendship. We have Nick and Charlie at rugby practice, and Nick is saying, I still couldn't come out to them. And, of course, in the show, since Charlie quit rugby in the last episode of Season 1, in Season 2, Episode 1, we have Charlie rejoining the rugby team.
I want to rejoin the rugby team.
But since that storyline didn't happen in the comics, Charlie is already a member of the rugby team, so nothing changed there. So Nick's saying, I still couldn't come out to them. And Charlie says, Nick, it's fine. There's no deadline. And Nick says, I know, but it's annoying when people think we're just best platonic bros. And here we have Charlie saying, I'm not sure I could handle us being fully out right now anyway. And Nick says, huh? Why? And Charlie says, well, I've sort of been stressed out because of exams and being fully out as a couple, everyone talking about us. I think that would finish me off, haha. And Nick says, hey, when did you start feeling like that? And Charlie says, it doesn't matter, it's just exam stress. I'm not saying you shouldn't come out, just forget I said anything. And Nick grabs his arm and says, Charlie, and then kisses him And they're kissing, and Nick says, "You can talk to me about it." And Charlie says, "Can you just kiss me again?" And then Miss Singh comes in and says, "How bloody long does it take you boys to put away the dun dun dun?" And they're caught kissing. This scene in the show is pretty similar, except in the show, the kiss is more of a playful thing where, Nick and Charlie are arguing about which of the two of them initiates kisses at school more often, and then they just playfully kind of kiss. In the comics, we have Charlie vocalizing something that he doesn't really say out loud in the show, which is the fact that, it's something that just lives in the subtext for the most part, especially in the first episode. But Charlie is outright saying here that being out with Nick as a couple would be very stressful for him. And, that he doesn't like the idea of everyone talking about them and being the center of attention. That's information that we kind of get from Tao later on, like way in episode 8. Here, Charlie openly, he still doesn't seem like he really wants to talk about it. Like, it just kind of slips out. And then Nick is like, "Hey, when did you start feeling like this? Tell me more." And Charlie is just like, Can we just kiss? I don't want to talk about it. Charlie, I think, is having some trouble here because his feeling is that having Nick come out and having them be the center of attention and worrying about Nick being bullied and that whole thing is really stressful for him. But at the same time, he wants Nick to feel like he can come out, like it's his decision when to do it and how to do it and all of that. So he's kind of torn here, but he's trying to be a good supportive boyfriend for Nick by not letting Nick know that he feels that way, because he doesn't want to impact Nick's decision when it comes to coming out. And in the show, again, this is something that goes unsaid, but that Nick picks up on along the way because he's Nick and he's very perceptive, especially when it comes to Charlie. So now obviously there's a lot more tension added into the show because that's just the nature of shows. They need to have more tension than than a slice of life comic needs. So, we have, not only is there the tension with Charlie's parents, which we do get in the comics, more so later on, but definitely more in the show. But we have the tension with Charlie's parents, and we also have the tension with Nick and the rest of the team.
Pass the ball, man. I was open.
Aren't you guys playing like a team?
The effects of Nick being at odds with Harry, who is not on the rugby team in the comics, and Christian, Cy, and Otis, and let's face it, probably many of the lads. I think it really made a lot of sense having that scene in the show where, they're at practice and Nick is just not passing to anyone because he's mad at them. Like, I liked that. I liked that as a show of, like, number one, Nick Nelson being human and doing human emotions. Number two, the fact that even the rugby king can make bad rugby decisions when he's upset. Yeah, and just in general, I think it makes a lot of sense. So, yes. But here we go to them in the changing room. And of course, in the show, this is the part where, we have some of the rugby lads in the background still muttering about Nick not passing to anybody. The whole Charlie giving Nick a candy bar and us getting a commercial for Cadbury.
And how did you know this is my favorite chocolate bar?
But here, Charlie's getting addressed and he says, "What was that all about?" And Nick's like, "Well, ... like he's just about to tell him, but then he remembers Charlie saying, being fully out as a couple, I think that would finish me off. And he notices that there's still people around, and so just ruffles Charlie's hair and says, "I'll tell you later." Here we have a very distinct moment of Nick thinking about the fact that Charlie admitted that them being out as a couple was a stressful thing for him. And so as a result, he pulls back a little bit. Like, he's back in friend mode when they're in public in the locker room, which I'm sure is what Charlie did not want to happen. Like, he didn't want Nick to have to censor his behavior for his benefit. Of course Nick is going to do that because he doesn't want to cause Charlie any undue stress, just like Charlie doesn't want to cause him any. But yeah, and then after that, we move into David's appearance, which is also episode 2. So I believe that is the last of episode 1 stuff that is in the comics. So to review, Okay, so the structure in the comics, we have Charlie tells his parents about Nick. Charlie flashes back to Nick telling him he came out to his mom and them kissing. We have some fun banter. Tori's there, and the no hanky panky as Charlie leaves. The vibe is positive and playful. Then after that, we see Nick and Charlie at school, and we have a montage of them studying and taking exams. Then Christian, Cy, and Otis reconcile with Nick. Then we have Nick and Charlie kissing in the equipment room, Charlie revealing that he is stressed about them coming out as a couple. And then the changing room where Nick pulls back a little bit because he doesn't want to cause Charlie stress. And that's where we end. Whereas in the show, we start off with chronological order. We start off with the very next morning after Nick told his mom, he and Charlie kissing. And then we go straight into a full montage of them kissing. And of course, we have all the other characters as well, like Tao and Elle, and Tara and Darcy, and stuff like that. Imogen. Oh yeah, we have Nick going to exam prep and ending up paired with Ben. Yeah, so in the show, episode 1, a lot more happens, obviously, because we have a lot more characters to deal with. We have a lot more tension to deal with. We have a lot more storyline to get through. So, as I've said before, I love the comics. I love the show. They're separate things, so I love them both. But if it's a choice between these things, I think I prefer the vibe of the comics, especially when it comes to Charlie and his parents and that scene. But from a story point of view, I very much prefer the show. I think the structure is wonderful. I love the way that they set it up. I love all the things they hit on. I like what they focus on. I like Nick coming out to Imogen, the party scene, and just there are so many beautiful things that we really get to see. But yeah, I like that we don't get told outright that Charlie is stressing about Nick coming out. Like, I think they do a really good job of weaving that in and giving us a little signs about it before it's actually stated. And I also really like that in the show we have that moment at the end where Charlie is talking to Tori about how determined he is to make Nick's coming out experience better than his.
It's not going to be like when I got outed. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Nick doesn't have to deal with what I did.
And that superimposed with Nick's smiling face and Tori's tearful eyes and the music building in the background just does such a great job of building tension and also just showing us how imperfect this is all going to go.
Everything's going to be perfect.
And episode 1 just has everything you want from the opening episode of a season. Like, it hits all the emotional points. It has great character moments. It introduces some really good storylines, some really good tension. The characters interact in really interesting ways. And in general, just A+++++. So, yeah. Okay, so fairly short one, since again, this episode has a lot of stuff in it that's not in the comics. But what do you think? What are your favorite aspects of the comics version of this? And what are your favorite aspects of the show? Do you have a favorite? Is there something you prefer in the comics versus the show for this part? Tell me everything. Tell me all your thoughts. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and liking and commenting and subscribing. And huge thanks to our patrons who are absolutely amazing and wonderful and fantastic and spectacular. And a special shout out to our Nick Nelson members, Kelly Walker, Paul Z, Kent Smither, and Kim Engel. And if you would like to be a patron, you can do so for as little as $1 a month, and you get early access to videos and access to our Discord and lots of other cool stuff. So something to think about. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful. No. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful. I cannot say that word. my tongue does not want to speak. Thank you so much for. I give up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night or whatever time of day it may happen to be, and I will see you next time. Okay. Bye.